Yes, yeah, trust that most of us face this challenge of easily getting angry. Okay, so Master says we must remain our mind to be upright and calm, upright and focused. How can we settle our minds? Before we settle our minds, I think we have to have a lot of patience. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Brother Chin to get into the study of patience. Please welcome Brother Chin.
Yeah. Stephanie, good evening, brothers and sisters. Welcome for this first time I'm sharing this on this platform. All right, so let's begin on this study of patience, it is an adapted version of what I shared to young parents on one Saturday morning at Sota. And let me go to this at the very beginning. There are four areas that I'll be covering. And probably I'll take about 40 minutes or so. One is the first topic I'm going to talk a little bit is about the peaceful life. To talk about peaceful life, I'm going to begin with what disturbs a peaceful life. Then I will give you a conceptual idea on the practice of patience, then experiential learning, and then I will end up by how to talk about how to sustain patience. Now, okay, the first topic, peaceful life. And this is what Master Chen Yan say, when you choose to live a simple life, our inner state will be calm and peaceful. Desire leads to adverse changes in our mindset. Now, this particular line, which I pick up from one of Master's sharing, it encapsulates the essence of what I'm sharing with you this evening. Now, the word is simple life. So I'm going to share with you one how do you have a simple life, an idea about it. Second point, which I have bold here, the inner state will be calm and peaceful. So, what is this mystical inner state? Can we attain that? Obviously, within just 40 minutes, I can only give you an idea of what it is, and you have to delve further deep into that. And obviously, if we have a chance to continue this, then we can dive deeper into that. So, peaceful life. First of all, let's begin with understanding what are the issues in our life. And, and this is what we are normal householder. Um, I asked another great master whom I met, and this was in India, and I asked him about life and as a monastic practitioner, and do we expect that they also have a peaceful life? And he actually told me and said that, you know, we live a worldly life, whether you're monastic or you're a householder. And in so doing, he said that because he is the head, he said, I worry about my monks. I worry about how to feed them tomorrow. So all the worldly things we have. So that's because what's going to happen the next day. So for us as ordinary householders, we have expectations. The only difference is the expectations are somewhat different. So for him, it was expectation is he able to feed the monks? Are the monks healthy? But for us, we look at what about my children? What will they become? Who are they mixing with? Who are they talking to? Is my wife happy with me? Do I have enough income? I need to buy a car. What about my family vacation? What about my investment? What about my promotion? And so all of the things we have in this ordinary life as a householder. So we have great expectations of everything that we have. Secondly, let's look at it. And because of this, we want to attain those expectations. So it's natural that you want to control. I mean, it's like driving a car, right? You want to go to a certain destination. You need to have in control of the direction and control of the car. So if you have certain expectation of your children, so naturally you want to control your children. Even when they grow up, then we have this self-cherishing views. And that's the way I think. But the point is, it's the way you think, the right thoughts. And we always think that's the right thought. Why is it the right thought? Because I'm trying to attain my expectation and go back to one. And so this will set direction. This expectation will set the direction of our thoughts. Will set the direction of our action of control. Will set the direction of how we think. And over time, as the way we behave, then we have what you call habitual tendencies. So these habits that we have, it comes from your frequent things that you say, from your frequent speeches. It comes from your frequent actions. And the source of which is from your thoughts. Now, when this happens over time, repeated action in time becomes a habit. A habit eventually becomes your character. And your character eventually becomes your nature. Your nature then determines your life. And that's the part that sets us in a direction, whether we are going towards a peaceful life or going to a disturbing life. So unless we understand our mind, we do not know where we are heading. Then I want to make question. Big question, of course, is: are you in control of your mind? And that's what this whole sharing is about. So if you don't have, you lead to impatience. So what are the results of impatience? What are the result of that? Arrogance, because of no ego emotion. When you have an expectation, you're a lot of self-cherishing thoughts. You want things to be done your way. It's your way or the highway. And so you've been controlling. Why? And it's something that's, you want to set the courses for others. And it's dominated by overwhelm by what your mind is, and your mind is controlled by your ego. And your ego will always come with emotion and selfish thoughts, and things to be done my way. And that's the way it is. That's one of my self-cherishing thoughts. So selfish thoughts come from a small mind. So it's my time. Now, impatient people have no time for anybody else. It's always for my time. And they don't have respect for the time of others. They expect everyone to cater for his or her time. So as a result of which, we have a commanding communication. So commanding a communication sounds like an order, like in a military regime. And when that happens, is that our children, and knowingly, we imprison the mind of our children because of the way they've been grown up. Have you ever heard of cases where suddenly, when the child leaves home and study elsewhere, they find there's a sudden release on their part.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
their minds get deviated because they're no longer, because all the time they've been growing up to be controlled by the parents. So when they're away from the parents, the mind get easily controlled by their friends or whoever they mix with. And that's the reason why, unless we help the mind of our children to grow independently, to be able to make their own decisions, it can be very, very easily influenced. So I just want to share with you, those who have um, heard or heard my summary of my teaching on the weekend of the young parents, you're seeing this. But I really want to show it to you is that I want to look at this is 1932. You see, in 1932, the time spent on average between the various categories, between the family, the school, the friends, neighbors, the church, restaurant, college, workers, and online. This done in the Western country. So you see, the biggest portion of time is spent with the family. But what is interesting to know is how this changes over time. And have a look at this. So you can see that the family and friends has always been at the top. And obviously, as leisure beginning to grow, you have the others taking part. We got social circle, we got friends, and the family take a smaller role. You look at the bar and the restaurant are slowly coming up, spend time more with workers, and especially when you strive for promotion, social path, and things like that. And look at online. Look at the speed of changes online. And this is what it is now. So, um, and these are the changing conditions that has already happened. So, not, I wanted to illustrate a story to you all because the time that um, my my generation, the baby boomer, I grew up without internet. And also later part of my working life, the internet came into the picture. And our children, my children, obviously Gen Y and Gen Z, they were brought up with internet. Now, I can't bring up my children the way my parents brought me up. And I need to understand the conditions I'm facing. So, in other words, I need to learn how to adapt myself. I need to keep up with the technology so that I can understand what you can and what you cannot do, what are the good and the bad side of it. So we learn to live peacefully. The question is, how can we learn to live peacefully? And I just put out on three A's so that it's simple to understand and simple to remember. One is learn to accept. And I'll explain to you what acceptance is about. And number two is adaptation. Learn how to adapt. And adaptation is about, just for example, the changing condition that I explained to you. You need to adapt to the changing conditions, and then only then we can advance and we can grow from there. Otherwise, we do not accept. The worst thing is we cannot even accept. We'll be fighting on things we cannot control. So we need to understand that what we can control and what we cannot control. So we must have um, the strength to accept what we cannot change, but we must have the courage to change what we can. So, what do you need to accept? You need to accept that life is life is meaning life as it is right now. You cannot go back in time. What already happened has already happened. Okay. Number two is expectation is about the future. So the future is not here. So when we have expectation, we have worries, with anxiety. Now, that does not mean to say that. When I was a student and I was studying to get good grades so that I can enter into a big accounting firm in the UK. Now, I have a goal. I have an experience, I have an aspiration. So I set my aspiration, that's my goal. Now, obviously, in terms of expectation, anything can happen in our life. But the question is, in the course of our life, there's so many things that can change. So if we do not, if I don't achieve my goal, can I accept things that have changed? So if I cannot accept, I will be very afflicted by all that comes to me. Okay. So I always, in the course of my work and over the years, I always, when I talk to my staff, when I guide them on a project, I always paint them a scenario and I say to them, what you're giving me is option one. And I ask him, if option A doesn't work, I want to know what is option B. If option B doesn't work, what is option C? So because we need to cater for the changing states of what is outside, which we have no control. And some of the things we can control, some of the things we can't. So life is a series of choices and options you have to make all the time. And that's how we need to learn to accept what life is. And we move on with it. It's only when we learn how to accept what life is, only then we can adapt to life flows. So adapting to life flows is other changes. And life flows the way it is for reasons that one may not fully understand. Each one of us have our own karmic imprint. And you have own my karmic imprint, and my karmic imprint today is different from my karmic imprint tomorrow, and my karmic imprint yesterday is different, and my karmic imprint is different from my children and my brothers and sisters, and so on and so forth. So all the things will changes will come to me. So how do I adapt to learn from this? And that's because if we cannot accept and we cannot adapt to the flow, we cannot live a peaceful life. Then we need to understand that life has its becomings. So becomings are the unfoldment of things that will happen in our life. The unfoldment events that can happen that you never expect. Everything is impermanent in life. The company you work for can collapse tomorrow. There could be a departure of a loved one. There could be someone who falls sick, and so on and so forth. So life has a series of tests, trials, and tribulations. So when we learn to live this life, and especially for one who walk in a spiritual journey, we need to learn how to accept and adapt in the course of our life. It's only then you can grow. Growing in our life is how can we grow to the changes in life? And how do we grow to the changes in life in a calm and peaceful manner? And that is what advancing in our life is about. So we need to be patient, listen and observe. Because if you have no patience to listen and observe, life will just pass us by without us knowing. Because we are so engaged in our own thoughts, we're so engaged in our own world, while the world is evolving outside. And before you know it, and you wake up, everybody has left you. And that's a frightening thought. By the time you realize that, it's too late. So when you sit back and you listen to what is happening, because our life has many lessons to teach us, and observe what is going on. Some of you who has followed me for some time will understand that I've always said to you to mindfully observe what is outside. And there are many lessons in our life that teaches us things that happen the way we do. And masters already taught us that each one of us has our own karmic imprint. And when you listen to your life and you listen to your life flows, there are a lot of teachings that will tell you, because the way karmic retribution happen is for us to resolve. It's not for us to get more afflicted by it. Obviously, easy for me to say, but with patience, it can help you a lot to listen to the story of your life, and you observe what is going outside, so you understand the conditions that you live in. So to live this peaceful life, what are the to me these are the two main traits or the two main characteristics of our life: simple life and contented life. So uh, how do I know of a simple life? Now, living a simple life doesn't mean that, you know what, because we need to understand we are householders, we are ordinary householders. Living a simple life doesn't mean that um, you're going to abandon everything and you're going to live in the forest. A simple life is, you do not indulge in excesses. So indulgence is excesses, and these are, I talked about tests, I talked about trials and tribulations in life. So it was the main thing in a simple life is fight against our own temptations. It's the temptation which is outside that makes our life very complicated. So you see, you want to live a simple life, learn to be kind, learn to be gentle in your ways, and learn to give way to others. And then you become accommodating. You see, when you are humble, you're gentle. When you're gentle, you're simple. When you're simple, you're charitable. When you're charitable, you're hospitable. And therefore, you become accommodating in the way of others. So you can still live. You can still live your own material life. You can still be very wealthy, but you don't indulge in all these excesses and in the temptations of life. Now, the one contented life, how can I tell that one person, the person may be poor, he could be wealthy, but how can you tell that he is living contented life? First, yes, live uncomplainingly. Now, you notice the more one person complains about anything, it can never be a happy, it never be contented by what is going on. And the other thing that I always find is those people are very uncontented, always gossiping. Oh, they talk about somebody else, and the person who has this contented life has inner joy and inner peace. That is where I'm referring to what Master said, and when I talk about the inner state of the mind, this inner joy and inner peace. The question is, how do you get that state of inner joy and inner peace? So we need to learn how we need to understand, first of all, we need to learn to understand the changing conditions outside. So when we learn to about the changing conditions outside, then we learn to grow, to accept, to adapt, and then to advance. Now, when we're able to do that, you reach a state of inner joy because you're simple in life. You are contented. You accept whatever comes to you. But obviously, you learn how to skillfully, how to deal with whatever that unfolds in your life. And that's where the inner joy leads to inner peace. So the practice of patience, which is about the mind. Now, patience begins with the mind. The question is, how do you do that? So first of all, we need to get to know ourselves. Now, this is very simple. This is get to know yourself. But really, do you know yourself? How many times have you engaged in a conversation with anyone about other people? You know what, we are very busy in knowing others. We really seldom know ourselves. So it's very easy for us to complain as somebody else, you're not good at this, you're not that, you're not helpful, you're not so on and so forth, you're argumentative, you're short-tempered, so on and so forth. But how much time We sit down and reflect on ourselves, get to know ourselves. And that is the beginning for us to want to change. So the acceptance of life is, that's what I mentioned earlier, because when you know yourself, then we understand our faults. So when we accept that, only then you accept them, we can learn how to change. So we let the life flows as we accept those faults. We let the life flows, and we need to change ourselves. So when we're able to do that, we will become, we will gentle, you're kind, cheerful, merciful, and peaceful. Now, just now, the earlier slide, I mentioned about inner peace. This part here I mentioned here is the outer peace. So what's the difference? This comes from your interaction between you and outside. Between you and outside, meaning how you accept the way life is, so whatever becomings there may be coming true to you, and then whatever lessons that is upon you from the own karmic retribution. But if you're able to do that, your interaction with people, with what matters, matter what things which are outside, you act in a very calm manner, because with calmness, in the way you act, you conduct yourself with calmness, naturally you become gentle. When you are gentle in your ways, you become kind. When you're kind, you're always cheerful. When you're cheerful, you are merciful. Merciful, you're forgiving. Then you're peaceful. That's your external cultivation. That's the external practice between you and outside. That is what we would do if we can accept your life is and let it flow and learn from all these things and transform yourself. But when you're able to do that, you can take that in and you walk and watch yourself inside how your mind was generated, and that calmness in you were able for you to grow with the inner joy and peace inside you. So, but okay, we'll talk about the mind. But we have a problem in here. Is this a mind is very difficult to tame. You know why it's difficult to tame? It's the function of the mind to generate thoughts. It's the nature of the mind. So what you're going to do? So how can you mold the mind? And you know what? It is difficult to mold the mind, but you can mold the mind. The question is how. So we start with the heart first. You see, if you jump straight to the mind and you do your mind, uh, I tell you what, it's not going to be. You can't you can't, because you think you're the master of your mind, but you really delve deep into your mind. The mind is a master. Then the question now is you have to ask yourself. That's why unless we know ourselves, we don't know who and what your mind is. And you know what? Your mind is being controlled. You think you're control of the mind, but your mind actually controlled by some external force. So what is this external force that is controlling our mind? And most of the time, you know what? Matters. Because we cannot accept those matters that come to our life. And we cannot accept the way our children behave. We cannot accept the promotion that I'm not getting. I cannot accept the financial loss. I cannot accept things. So when you can't do that, your mind is being possessed by the external force without us knowing. But you think you have control of your mind. So we begin with the heart first. Because unless your heart is open, the mind cannot open. So how do we do that? We learn to expand our heart. It's only then the mind can elevate. I mean, elevating your mind is like liberating from the burden that we've been carrying. So the heart that has small love, that my master say, is difficult. It's difficult because it's being burdened with, selfish desires, selfish love, small love. Because when your heart expands, you you become more generous. You become giving. When the heart becomes giving, the mind learns to give way. And that's the beginning of the journey. Obviously, this whole journey of expanding the heart is a long journey. But you know what? The interesting thing is the Searchy platform gives us a great opportunity to expand the heart. But if you expand the heart and you do not elevate the mind, you don't grow the mind either. So so therefore we need to be very mindful as we expand the heart. We need to learn to adapt the teachings to the mind so they can live life in accord with the teachings, life in accord with the Dharma. So Master used the words living the wisdom life, and that's what it is. Because when you learn the wisdom life, you are actually applying the virtues and the teachings to your daily life, and to go in skillful means to overcome whatever uh, attribution that you face. So the self transformation, and then so we have the I, me, and mine inside me, right? So when I have I, me, and mine inside me, I have a lot of impatience. But it's from when you're able to cut off the I and the M from the of impatient, you separate the I, me, and the mine, you become I am patient, and that's what we want to do. So how do I separate the I, me, and mine from this? Is by expanding our heart, and that's what becomes I am patient. So the experiential learning is about your own self-effort. So how did you grow to this self-effort? Because nobody can make you become patient. You have to make yourself patient. The question is how. So the foundation of patience is this. First of all, do your self-analysis. After those who are working, I'm sure you understand this. Whatever things that you do, you need to analyze the data. You need to analyze whatever market conditions outside. So it's a question of analyzing yourself. So we need to spend time. We need to spend time studying ourselves. It's only when you have self-analysis then you get into self-knowing. So that is part of need to know ourselves. Now, only when you're self-knowing, then you can get into the next stage of self-correction. So with the self-correction, now, you know what? It's like uh, acknowledging the ugly side of us. And unless we acknowledge this, we cannot get into self-growth. And that's what we need to do. But obviously, there are a lot more details to this, which we don't have time to share today. So the fusion of patience has result of all this is, and you have this, your understanding of others. You understand the minds of others. You're respectful of others, very humble in a ways. You're peaceful and harmonious. Obviously, by doing all these things, yeah, it is easy for me to do. But how many times when things suddenly happen, we tend to react. But when we actually live the wisdom life in the Dharma, when we learn to accept our life as, and it's the first stage, and it is a it requires a diligent practice to accept life, uh, uh, to accept life as. Because when we're able to do that, we can grow our mind consciousness and instead of being stuck to reaction, we respond. So the fundamental between reaction and respond is this. Reaction arises from the arising of our own habits. So reaction is from habitual tendencies. Response is from a knowing mind. So reaction is instantaneous. So what do we do? When things happen, you really, really need to watch inside what thoughts arises. And very difficult when your emotion overwhelms you. So, you need to take a time off, walk away and cool yourself. But obviously, that's not the long-term solution. The long-term solution is to be able to, in that moment, to remain calmness. And that goes through um, many years of cultivation in your lifetimes. So, so we need to be naturally patient. So interesting is we live in a world of duality, which means that it's from impatience that give rise to patience. So when we understand that, we regard impatience as our training. We regard impatience as a ground for our training and train to the level that patience is part of you. Patience is in your nature. And that state, when you get into the non-arising patience, you don't need to arise patient at all because it's part of you. And that's what we want to drive towards. And that's where the noble nature of patience is. So, so how do we sustain, which is the last topic I want to share, how to sustain the virtue of patience? And what is this art of sustaining patience? So how does patience grow? Patience is grown from impatience, right? As I mentioned earlier. Now, patience is knowledge from innumerable moments of impatience. So we need to understand that patience is not an evil unless we give energy to the impatience. So we regard impatience as a training for us. And so how I'm scared, for example, um, how would you, for example, you're there to meet someone for lunch, and that someone's you know what is going turning up half an hour late for whatever reason. So I first of all, the question is, are you prepared for the lateness of that person? I'll tell you what I do. I prepare myself for anyone to be late. That's why wherever I go, those who know me, I always carry my laptop with me. I will engage in studying master's teaching or whatever dharma that I'm working on my own spiritual diary. So every moment it teaches me patience, and actually my wife knows that I do that. So patience is from innumerable ways of impatience. So we learn patience from innumerable times. We also learn patience from innumerable ways. So what are the ways? You could be by lunch, you could be waiting for somebody, you could be picking up children, you could be waiting for your results, it could be for anything. And these are the innumerable ways. So a virtue has to be cultivated in 1,000 times over 1,000 ways. It's only then we can go in patience. You go in patience, perfection of patience. So we cultivate 1,000 times or 1,000 ways. And that's how we would do from this life and every lifetime. So when we understand that, we embrace impatience with positivity. So to sustain patience, we need to do so with perseverance. So from patience, it's without patience we cannot persevere. So in order to sustain that, then we can grow into perseverance. When you have a level of perseverance, you can go into you can go into stillness of the mind, which is samadhi. So otherwise, how are we going to be have the stillness in us without patience and perseverance? So, so perseverance is a practice of diligence. Otherwise, you cannot be diligent in our practice in our life. So patience is a virtue that grows you in enduring hardships, changes, and difficulties without losing your composure and tolerance. Because if you don't do that, you'll be losing your mind. So, in a Jingxi aphorism, it says, only by being understanding then can one turn anger into kindness. And that understanding is the state of the mind, which I just mentioned earlier. So, a short reflection for you. Patience is a virtue of great love. Perseverance is the seat of nobility. Nobility means benevolence. Benevolence means you are able to put the interests of others ahead of yours. That's nobility. And selflessness is the root to wisdom. So, a pondering for you, relationships, whether in business or otherwise, will dramatically change. Nothing remains in the same state. This is the good time to practice the patience and perseverance, which I mentioned earlier, so that you respond and not react to circumstances. This will entail the practice of cultivating the virtues moment to moment, as I explained earlier. So, with that note, Captain brothers and sisters, I will stop here